Political partisanship is healthy for a democracy if it is accompanied with patriotism. It can help implement better legislations, pass better laws, attend to the majority of the constituents. However, political partisanship can also destroy democracy whenever members of at least one party have completely abandoned any form of patriotism. Hello, I am MD, and this is the fourth branch program, the first and only program which is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. Abraham Lincoln said, "You can fool all the people some of the time, some of the people most of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time." The program today is to take a look at what is actually going on in the United States of America. What is exactly going on? Now, if you are 30 years plus, or even if you are 18 years or even younger, you cannot but see that there is something that is definitely not normal in the country. This is not the United States of America you felt prideful or you want to feel proud about. The framers of the Constitution thought it right to have three separate branches of the government in order to preserve the system of democracy we have here in the United States, at least for 200 plus years. But for the past 2+ years, it doesn't feel anywhere near any such freedom, any such democracy in the country. There is a feeling of exhaustion. There is a feeling that this is not someplace you would want your kids to grow in. And this is a warning. The content of this program is not for everyone. Now, if you want to find out whether that's for you, there are two simple questions you need to answer. One, would you entrust your teenage daughter to a known rapist? Two, would you have a known pedophile care for your toddler? If you have difficulty answering either questions, or if you answered yes to both questions, this program is definitely not for you. You can close the video now and move on to something else. If your answer is absolutely not to both questions, you should stick around. This program will be of importance to you because, as mentioned earlier, it is only for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Good morning. Welcome to a special edition of the Fourth Branch program, the first and only dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. Today the program is to find out what does GOP stand for. But before we begin, let's take a look at the most important news that are currently ongoing. Yesterday we had a bombshell of an op-ed that was dropped on New York Times, which accuses the Trump administration of an administration in complete disarray. Now, what makes this bombshell important is the fact that it was attributed to a senior official within the Trump administration. Needless to point out that the White House was scrambling, trying to figure out, number one, who that senior official might be, and the second, how to respond to that bombshell. By the information on the op-ed, it is very certain that the individual is indeed an official of the Trump administration and has a great deal of information in regards to the inner working of the administration. Now, what makes it very intriguing is the fact that the op-ed was published under anonymous, something that's very rarely done in the news. But for security reason, of course, in order to safeguard the information about the individual, the New York Times decided to withhold that information from the public. The White House press secretary has accused the person, the individual, of being a coward, and Donald Trump has accused the person of treason and even threatened to force New York Times to give up the name of that individual. It is important to note that New York Times, being a free press, is under no obligation whatsoever to provide that information to the Trump administration. Now, that piece of news came at the heel of discussion, debate, which is currently ongoing in regards to the book Fear, Trump in the White House, which is published by Bob Woodward, a veteran in the political scene. And Bob Woodward is very famous for writing truthful information. And as if that weren't bad enough, if you recall, a couple of weeks ago, Omarosa, the liaison in the Trump administration with the black community, published a book under the title Unhinged, in which Mrs. Omarosa detailed encounter with various individuals working for the Trump administration. In other words, the Trump administration is in complete disarray, and it is just a matter of time before the bottom falls. In the meantime, a number of pundits in the news have been clamoring for Congress to do something about the situation. Now, a month or so ago, Michael Cohen, who is or was Donald Trump attorney, personal attorney, and / fixer, did plead guilty to several counts of fraud, and at the same time accused Donald Trump of being the individual behind most of everything he has done wrong. And prior to that, in the same week, there was Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort, who was found guilty of 8 counts of money laundering and so on. And as we are talking in Washington, there is ongoing selection of jury for the second trial of Paul Manafort. So it is without doubt that the Trump administration has been under siege since day one of the administration. Most of the problem have been caused, obviously, by Trump himself for doing a number of things that are not only unorthodox, some of them outright illegitimate, some theater in the lines of obstruction of justice. Another piece of news, Republican constituents are still in the dark. Yes, most Republicans, especially those who still support Donald Trump, live very largely in the dark, despite the wide availability of the internet. The cause of the problem is not lack of information, but rather an inclination to seek for sources of information which support their preset views, however false and misleading. As such, Trumppublicans are more inclined to reject any information which does not support their views, does not please them, or is critical to Donald Trump. For that reason, most Trumppublicans turn to Fox, Rush Limbaugh, the Daily Caller, Breitbart, InfoWars, places where information which are positive about Trump are discussed, debated, and everything that is detrimental to the Trump administration is withheld. So most Trumppublicans are completely unaware of what really is going on in the real world of politics in the United States. I'll be right back to discuss with you what we consider as important information to discuss on what does GOP stand for. I'll be right back.
So how do you define the threat? Well, like Germany then, or dangerous nutcases now?
Yeah, I would go, first of all, one step further in this description of Hillary Clinton. She wouldn't just be a disaster. Hillary Clinton is disqualified from being Commander-in-Chief of the United States. Someone who cannot handle intelligence information appropriately cannot be Commander-in-Chief.
What does GOP stand for? Now, the clip that you just saw of Marco Rubio talking about Hillary Clinton had to do with the fact that during the 2016 presidential election, that's actually what Marco Rubio felt was necessary to, as a matter of criteria and qualification for the individual who would be looking to become the next president of the United States. And of course, Marco Rubio wasn't really the only individual who felt that way, and we have actually other members in the Republican Party who felt that Hillary Clinton was not qualified to be president of the United States. And if you recall, there was an email debacle that suggests 30,000 emails which belonged to the State Department during the time that Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, and she had made use of a personal server, and presumably at some point 30,000 emails were gone, disappeared from the server. And as you just heard in the clip we provided to you, Marco Rubio felt that disqualify Hillary Clinton to become the next president of the United States. Now let's take a look at another individual, that was Ted Cruz, who felt that Hillary Clinton was way too corrupt to become the next president of the United States. Let's take a look.
Told you that the best I can, there's no doubt these are high crimes, in my opinion. And this is a hard decision for our country, but when I first spoke to you, I thought we would be better off if Bill Clinton left office. And I want the chance to prove to you why. Give me a chance to prove to you why I believe that, why my colleagues voted our conscience to get this case to where it should be, not swept under the rug, but in a trial to disposition. I have lost no sleep worrying about the fact that Bill Clinton may have to be removed from office because of his conduct. I have lost tons of sleep thinking he may get away with what he did. Now,
I apologize. I did mention that you will be looking at a clip from Ted Cruz, but that was instead a clip from Lindsey Graham, who was talking about the impeachment of Bill Clinton in 1998. And again, as I mentioned, there were tons of people who believed that Hillary Clinton was not qualified to become the next president of the United States. One individual who actually made that clear, that was Paul Ryan, during an interview with CNN, Jake Tapper. Mr. Ryan made a case which would draw the line in the sand that Hillary Clinton cannot be president of the United States because of her mishandling of classified information. Let's take a look at that, and then we will come back to discuss on the other side the detail of that interview.
In the last few days, under your leadership, the House of Representatives has asked the Director of National Intelligence to not give classified briefings to Hillary Clinton, as all presidential nominees get. He said no to that. The House of Representatives. You got his letter today. House Republicans are trying to make that happen legislatively. House Republicans are suggesting there should be an investigation as to whether or not she lied to Congress. House Republicans are suggesting there should be an investigation, a corruption investigation into the Clinton Foundation. Now, I'm sure House Republicans are all excited about those measures, but to the people in the audience and at home who think, wow, that's a lot, this seems more like trying to undermine the Democratic presidential candidate and less like a hunt for truth. What do you say? How do you convince them that this is on the up and up?
First of all, the reason we know about any of this, I would argue, is because of congressional oversight. Second of all, we want to make sure that everyone is treated equally. I believe that she has gotten preferential treatment throughout much of her career in that she believes she's above the law. She holds herself above the law, and I think everybody should be held accountable. Here's my point. James Comey, when he laid out the laundry list of things that she had done wrong, basically shredding the case that she had been making for herself all year long, then said, after not saying that he was going to press charges or file an indictment, that usually what's in order here, where somebody mishandles classified evidence so much, information so much, that there's administrative justice. There's an administrative action that occurs after a person like that. That means that person who is proven to mishandle such sensitive information should be denied future access to that information. Now, if she gets elected president, it's a different story. But I'm familiar with what she's about to get. I got this as Mitt Romney's running mate. When you come out of the convention you get the most deeply classified secrets of our government. You get read into all of our very classified programs. It's a very severe responsibility, a very serious responsibility. And I would say that any other person that did something like this, a State Department employee, somebody in the military, they would be held to the same standard, which is they would be denied that kind of information. So I think
Now, as you just heard, Paul Ryan has the ultimate standard for people handling classified information. And according to the clip you just heard, it would be unacceptable for Hillary Clinton to be provided classified briefing. That's what that interview was about. Paul Ryan was trying to make the point that Mrs. Clinton is incapable of handling classified information. Now, you heard Marco Rubio earlier making the exact same point, that Hillary Clinton cannot be trusted with the presidency of the United States because she has proven to be unable to handle secret classified information. Now, usually if you are a Christian and you believe, just an example, not sure what you believe in or whether you even believe in the example I'm about to provide, but if you are a Christian and you believe that smoking is bad, it's unacceptable, it's not biblical, then that stance, that belief should be uniform. Because if you now see that either your child, your spouse or your fiance or whoever that happened to be in your family smoke, and it's okay by you, that means you never, to begin with, believe in the fact that smoking is bad or smoking is unchristian. Now, the same analogy applies here with the Republican Party, because it is one thing to say that it is what you believe in, and when it presented to you and it so happened to become part of an individual or a few individuals doing it within your party, then if you cannot stand for that, then you never had a stand to begin with, which meant it was just for the sake of not wanting the other side. You were just talking for the sake of talking. And I mention that is because we have seen a lot of that. Now, that doesn't mean Republican or Democrats do not do a little bit of that too, but in the Republican Party in general, it has become widespread that they talk about something that they think is bad, is wrong for the country, but when they have the opportunity to implement that something, they go the other way. I can give you an example just now. Throughout the whole 2 terms of President Obama, and during the time that Clinton was president, and so on, Republicans always argue for fiscal responsibility, because leaving debt to our children is one of the most outrageous things that any administration can do. So when it was Bill Clinton, that was the case. And when George W. Bush became president, then the deficit ballooned and nobody said anything. When Obama came, again, the debt becomes an issue. And now that Donald Trump is in the White House, then again, debt is going out of control. In other words, we can conclude with certainty, not assumption, not supposition, we can conclude with certainty that Republican doesn't care about debt, doesn't care about deficit, because we've been having that every time that there is a Democrat administration. Republicans jump on the bandwagon. They want to limit spending, they want to control deficit, they want to control debt. The next administration, Republican, then the deficit and the debt balloon. To them, it's just fine. They don't have any problem. They sign on it. In fact, if you remember, the country had to borrow $1.5 trillion under Donald Trump in order to provide tax cuts to large corporations and wealthy individuals. And by the way, out of those $1.5 trillion, 1.3 of that goes to large corporations and to wealthy individuals. And Republicans pass it, they celebrated for passing a tax cut. So we know anybody in their right mind, no matter what the justification is, but anybody in their right mind has to come to the conclusion that the Republicans do not care a bit about deficit, do not care about national debt, because they just don't. Every time that they have the opportunity, they just do the opposite of what they claim they want, because they had so much problem about putting debt on the next generation. They calculate how much each child who is not even born is going to owe the country. That's during Democrat administration. Now they had that problem and Trump came. Now if that problem was genuine, if that concern was genuine, that there is no reason that later on they would continue to compound the problem. So it is established. Republicans, when it comes to anything about the well-being of the country, Republicans talk a lot of talk, but they do not do anything to help advance their cause. They always go the other way. Now back to our example. There is a saying that was attributed to Alexander Hamilton. They said, if you do not stand for something, you will fall for anything. And another version of that they attributed to Peter Marshall, those who stand for nothing fall for anything. And that's pretty much what we have been seeing in general with the Republican Party. Now the two videos that I just showed you, one with Marco Rubio talking how bad it was to even consider Hillary Clinton as president because she mishandled information. I don't know if you recall, Donald Trump has been cozied up to Vladimir Putin to a point where he had invited a Russian into the Oval Office. No American was involved, no camera from the American press, just a Russian. Journalists, cameramen, and a Russian ambassador inside the Oval Office. Now you're talking about someone mishandling email, and you could not stand up, and here was Trump inside the Oval Office with Russians. No peep from any Republican. In other words, Republicans stand for absolutely nothing. When it comes to security of the country, if it's a Democrat, they talk all kind of baloney about, they concerned about the national security, they concerned about this, they concerned about that. But you cannot be concerned about it when there is a Democrat, but when there is a Republican, then you let everything that put the security, the national security of the country in jeopardy, and you do absolutely nothing. That doesn't make any sense. Those who stand for nothing fall for anything. And unfortunately, that's what has been going on with not just those Republicans in Washington, not just with the legislators in Washington, but even with the constituent. And that's one of the biggest problems that the country has been facing. First, you have a number of legislators who are self-serving as far as the well-being of the country. We already established that they could not care less. They talk and talk and talk because that's the way that they're able to attract individuals who are either naive, gullible, individuals who only rely on those people. And unfortunately, those messages are usually echoed by the likes of Fox, Rush Limbaugh, most of the network within the Republican circle are usually inclined to echo whatever Republicans say, and they take that at face value as if it's true. And what I always say to individuals in either party is to actually take a look at not only what your legislators are doing, but also to use your critical thinking to see whether what they're saying is of any value. Because, as I proposed in the example earlier, if you are a Christian and believe that smoking is bad, it doesn't matter who is doing the smoking. Whether it's your brother, your sister, your parents, your spouse, your children, if smoking is bad, smoking is bad. Now, if you have an argument to defend your spouse smoking, then you never believe that smoking is bad, or you simply are not concerned about people smoking. So when you come and make your argument to me that smoking is bad, then I would tell you to go away, because you do not have any belief in what you're saying. You cannot be telling me one thing when it's not impacting you, and then you believe a different thing when it's impacting you. And that's really how the country has been going, and that's one of the reasons that we are in the kind of situation we're in. Donald Trump did not create the problem that we have in this country. Granted, he has helped to exacerbate the problem. This is granted, this is pretty obvious. He has helped to exacerbate the problem. However, that problem that we have today in the country has been around for quite some time. And Republicans in general have been very much at the forefront of shifting the country to the situation, to the position where we are today. How do I know that? Let's take, for instance, the past 8 years, Let's take, for instance, the 2 terms of Obama administration. On January 20th, 2009, that was the date when Obama was being sworn in. Now, 2 things happened. One, the country elected the first black president since its existence. It is history. This is history unfolding right under our eyes. Now, whether you're Democrat or Republican, then you would imagine that at least that one day Republican would have put partisanship on the side and help celebrate this milestone in the history of the country. There are two major things that happen on that same day. A number of the Republican leaders, including Mitch McConnell and of course the whole gang, gathered not too far away from where Mr. Obama was being sworn in, and they were discussing, not celebrating history, not reveling in this moment that something that nobody even imagined could happen, but instead they were planning how to prevent Obama from succeeding. And I kid you not, that's what the meeting was about. And I'll show you in a short little while. But at the same time, to give you a sense as to how Republicans have been making those things happen, so Donald Trump simply take a ride, piggyback, so to speak, on what Republicans have been doing. Now, at the same time, at Fox, which is a major network, at the time that Obama was being sworn in, Fox was airing some stupid program. Nothing to do with the swearing. So you see, Republicans have been helping or have been at the core of what we're seeing today. It's not something that just happened. It's not Donald Trump who creates that problem. Republicans have been very instrumental to taking the country down this path. The next day, January 21st, 2009, remember I just mentioned to you? On January 20th, 2009, Mr. Obama was being sworn in. On that same day, a few yards away in Washington, the Republican leaders were plotting. I use the word plotting because really that's what that is. To prevent Obama from doing anything substantial for the country. Now, you can tell me whatever you want. You can tell me how much you hate Obama. But for God's sake, someone just got elected president. Not only it was historic, but it is, and in case you forgot, the country was still in a recession. If you remember 2007, at the end of 2008, the country fell into a recession. People were laid off in masses from their jobs. Unemployment was sky high. Now, why do you think that is? That the country was going through serious problem. We're not talking about a problem that was caused by a Democrat. We're talking about problem that were caused during a Republican administration. Now, in case you don't know anything about history, when George W. Bush took over the country, there was a surplus. Bill Clinton, who preceded George W. Bush, left the country with a surplus. Not deficit, surplus. the George W. Bush administration distributed that surplus in the form of tax cut. And within 1 year of George W. Bush in the Oval Office, the surplus was already turned into a deficit. Nothing yet has happened. The surplus was already turned into a deficit. So when Obama took over the administration, the Oval Office, when Obama took over the presidency of the United States, the country was going through very hard time. Unemployment was 10 point something. Wall Street fell. Bank fell. And instead of having a meeting to figure out how do we help the next president to get the country out of this situation, the Republicans a few years away were plotting how to make certain that Obama did not succeed. And sure enough, on January 21st, the very next day, Mitch McConnell gave a press conference and said, and I'm quoting, "Our number one priority is to ensure that Obama has only one term as president, is a one-term president." So out of that meeting, they figure out what to do, they figure out how to do it, and the next day, Mitch McConnell said, "Our number one priority is to make Barack Obama a one-term president." Yes, Donald Trump did not cause that problem. The problem that we're currently going through in this country was not caused by Donald Trump. Yes, it's easy to simply dump it on him because he is not really the orthodox type of individual. He was the least qualified candidate to run for president, and he has proven to be really incapable. All that is understood. However, Donald Trump is not responsible for the problem. Republican leaders currently in Washington, from Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, and the whole gang, they've been plotting to make this situation the way it is today. This is not an accident. Mitch McConnell, January 21st, 2009, walked into a podium on the national stage, said, "Our number one priority is to make Obama a one-term president." How do you think they would do that? First day of a president. So it's not like they know what the president was going to do. It's not like they know what the plan was. It's because they already have their own plan. And the plan was actually very simple. To put stumbling block every step of the way to prevent him from achieving anything in life, as if he was doing it for himself. So yes, Republicans like to talk about what they want to do for the country. That's words. They just saying that, but in reality, Republicans couldn't care less about the country. Every step that Republicans take is to undermine what's necessary, what would be good for the well-being of the country. And it is not just a statement. They prove that over and over and over again, that they do not care about the United States of America. Day one of Obama presidency, Mitch McConnell, after conferring with members of his party on the day that Obama was being sworn in, came out and outlined their priority. It didn't say our number one priority is to make Obama a one-term president. And the plan is to make sure that whatever Obama proposed for the country is stopped, is blocked, is prevented. And what do you think Obama was proposing? Policies that's good for the country? Policies that's good for the constituent? Not for himself. Because everything that Obama was doing, whether you agreed with it or not, whether it was perfect, it was flawed, no matter what he was doing it for the country. Now you would think that the individual, the Republican legislators in Washington, you would think if their concern were also to get the country out of the situation it was in, and the country was in a bad situation. It was a recession. The unemployment rate was at over 10%. Now that would be the time when they put all partisanship bickering on the side and work with the president to get something done, to get people out of unemployment and get people to start working. Instead, what they did is putting stumbling block after stumbling block, obstacles to prevent the president of the United States from achieving anything on behalf of the people of the United States. So yes, Donald Trump is not at the root of the problem. The Republican legislators, and worse, the leaders in the Republican Party, not just a few Republicans on the fringe. The leaders, that was Mitch McConnell, who took it upon himself to put obstacles, stumbling block, to prevent anything from being done. So yes, the Republican.
That was episode 1 of What Does GOP Stand For? This afternoon at 6:30 p.m. we will continue the conversation on what does GOP stand for exactly. What do GOP members stand for? Now we have watched most of the obstacles that were put during the Obama administration being debated as politics. In fact, that's one of the reasons that most of the problem that the country has confronted for a very long time, the constituents have bought to the idea that whatever happens in Washington is politics as usual. We even have a name for it. We call it gridlock. But in reality, politics is played in a way so that one party can get the upper hand over the other party. But if you get to the point of having to lie about what you're doing to prevent something that would be good for the constituent from being done, this is not politics. This is pure Machiavellic, because any politician who run for public office and who goes to Washington, their message has always been they're going to Washington to do things for the constituent. So I understand that you may have different ways, you may have different understanding of how a policy should be implemented, which is fine, because if you're from a different political party, there is no one that would say that you have to agree with what the other side wants or wants to implement. For instance, if you are a Christian, you may not agree necessarily with homosexuality. So that disagreement would be just clear cut. But if you have to lie about an individual in order to make a point, or if you have to resort to Machiavellic measures, then automatically we're not talking about politics. If you remember, during the Obama administration, when you proposed the Healthcare Act, which later on was called Obamacare, then there were a lot of messages, a lot of information that were being propagated, amplified at Fox, and one of those messages was the death panel. Now, we know today that it wasn't true. We know today that was something that was concocted by the Republican Party just to scare people out of supporting it. So this is not politics. And today we have someone in the White House, someone in the Oval Office, that the whole country, 60+% of the constituent in the country disapprove of what's going on in Washington. Now, this is exhaustion at its worst. But that didn't happen out of the blue. The Republican Party has been working steadily to undermine the progress in the country. So, as you just heard in the clip, Donald Trump is not fully responsible for the problem. Donald Trump has taken advantage of the chaos, has taken advantage of the erosion in the Republican Party. In fact, that is the very reason today we have Donald Trump as president of the United States. One other thing that happened during the Obama administration, for the first time in the history of the Republic, during a State of the Union, a member of the Republican Party stood in the room, in the back of the room, while the president was delivering the speech, and he shouted, "You lied." Now, it was beyond acceptance for a member in the Republican Party. This is not politics. This was unacceptable. This is degrading to the presidency of the United States. And yet, it has been happening from day one. And what we're seeing today, this is just a continuation of the erosion of decency in politics. So we're hoping that you can join us later this afternoon at 6:30 p.m. when we continue the conversation on what does GOP stand for exactly. They are standing in the way of progress. They are standing in the way of advancing the country forward. And everything that they're doing, we cannot call that politics, because it is not politics. It is Machiavellic. And it is hurting the country in major ways. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, this time, this era, this period that we're living, you cannot stand on the sideline. You cannot not do anything. You cannot just throw the towel. It is the time for you to take a stand and get rid of those Republicans in Washington. Because if you do nothing today, your kids, your grandkids, future generation, the country that you love, the country that you came to, your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents came to enjoy the freedom, the liberty that you have enjoyed, your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids will not get will not find this country. This country will not exist, because if you look at today, the state of affairs in the country, now fast forward that to the future, that it's going from bad to worse, to worse, and to worse. That country will no longer exist. So it is up to we the people to get rid of those individuals in Washington who are not doing the job for which they were elected. Because when they came to us to get elected, they made a promise that they are going to fight to uphold the Constitution of the United States. They were going to fight. They were going to Washington to make sure that they change the country to become better. But instead, they take the country down a path that is not good for the future generation. So join me this afternoon at 6:30 p.m. to continue that conversation. I'll be right back.
I'm telling you, Michael Jordan himself was right here in my McDonald's. I fixed him the very first McJordan special. Right, Bill? I did. I took a quarter-pound of pure beef, smoked bacon, cheese, and some of my favorite barbecue sauce, and I named it the McJordan Special.
Bill, the sandwich, definitely great.
Yeah, but you got the cooling with that story.
But it's true.
How you doing, Bill?
Hi, Michael. Michael.
The McJordan Special, for a limited time.
The United States of America is in a serious crisis. The biggest problem, the crisis that the country is going through now, is to have a network that's called itself news, but that says nothing about news. That's only telling lies, create controversies, and at the same time, educating millions of people to stay or become ignorant. There is nothing that is said by Sean Hannity. There is nothing that is said at Fox.
This is
that is
a recorded video, so which means.
So when I say the country is in a crisis, this is not an exaggeration. Donald Trump is wrong to call the media the enemy of the country. Adolf Hitler did exactly the same thing in 1933. Journalists are not in the business of fairness. Our business, our only business, is to be objective. It is our duty to hold Trump and every administration accountable. Today, it is urgent, it is necessary, it is critical. Our very freedom depends on it.
Thank you for watching. I hope again to see you later this afternoon when we continue the debate on what do GOP members stand for. Later.